The worst thing in this planet is, prison. In one white hall, 350 prisoners were there. I was among those prisoners for nearly 2 years.
Dawit Kebede was arrested while reporting on the street protests which erupted after Ethiopia's 2005 parliamentary elections.
Reporting the truth should not get you labeled as an enemy of the state.
Kebede criticized the government's use of lethal force to counter protests in this editorial. He quotes Ethiopia's constitution, which guarantees the right to life for innocent civilians. Why then, he asked, did security forces open fire on peaceful protesters, turning the capital into a war zone? Nearly 200 people were killed that day. Kebede was charged with attempting to overthrow the constitution, treason, and genocide. He was given a life sentence.
I sometimes ask myself, whose country is this? How on earth can somebody else label me as I am committing high treason against my nation?
Ethiopia has been racked by civil war, dictatorship, and famine. In the early 90s, the current ruling party, led by Prime Minister Meles Zenawi, overthrew military dictatorship in hopes of bringing stability to the country. A new constitution, created in 1994, laid the groundwork for the first democratically elected government and included an array of human rights protections, including free speech. While the country saw some stability, advances in free speech and human rights protections fell flat in late 2005. Zenawi's government used lethal force against protesters demanding reform for what they felt were rigged elections. Thousands were arrested, including dozens of opposition party members and 15 newspaper editors.
Ethiopia is certainly one of the most restrictive nations in Africa in terms of press freedom. It has one of the most appalling press freedom records on the continent.
Mohamed Keita, who's based in New York, works to protect the rights of journalists working in Africa.
Scores of journalists have been prosecuted, harassed, intimidated, and forced outside Ethiopia over the years, and they continue to flee the country because of intimidation.
First, when they arrest us, they beat us very hard.
Feleke Tibebu, who now lives in Silver Spring, Maryland, was Kebede's deputy editor back in Ethiopia. He was reporting on the post-election protests alongside Kebede when they were both arrested.
We were in solitary confinement, without a toilet, without a shower. So we pee and we use the toilet inside one cell. Cost us $6.55, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Tibebu was released after 17 months in prison. Then, he learned of 3 more charges against him, and the government denied him a publishing license, making it impossible to work. With Kebede, his editor, still in jail facing a life sentence and with no way to earn a living as a journalist, Tibebu decided to leave his country.
Especially after I heard that I have 3 charges, I know that this government is going to do me something. They're not going to let me, to get my freedom again. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Let's go.
Tibebu says that his first priority was to his family. After 3 years, they were able to join him in the States. Now, he says he can focus on his second priority, getting a degree in journalism and practicing his profession again.
Journalism is my life, and I feel that I can't live without being a journalist, so this is my plan.
Kebede was among the last of the 15 jailed editors to be released. Most went into exile, but Kebede remained in Ethiopia, determined to start another newspaper.
Living in exile and living here in a repressive situation, both are the same. At least if you are here, you are doing something which is remarkable, or that's why I prefer this one.
2 days after serving a 21-month sentence, Kebede applied for a publishing license. It took a while, but he eventually got the permit and started the newspaper Arumba Times. It's widely considered one of the only independent newspapers written in Amharic, Ethiopia's national language. It's also Ethiopia's second largest newspaper and one of the only news sources of any kind that tackles politics.
Very few newspapers report on political affairs and dare to question or criticize the policies of Prime Minister Meles Zenawi because of years of repression.
Kebede's decision to stay in Ethiopia comes with personal sacrifices. To get out of jail, he had to sign this conditional pardon. It states that he admits guilt for the crimes he was charged with and that he promises to respect the constitutional order. It essentially allows the government to arrest Kebede at any time, for any reason.
They can arrest me once again. I don't bother. But I can assure that even if they arrest me, the next step, what I'm thinking about is about my next job. To get back to report here in my country.
Kebede says he'd like to start a family, but living under constant threat of arrest has made that impossible.
You need to have, a stable life. But my life is not stable at this moment. I don't know what will happen tomorrow and after tomorrow.
His insistence on staying in Ethiopia has also strained the relationship with his sister. He says she didn't speak to him for a year because she felt that staying in the country and starting another newspaper was too dangerous. In 2009, a new anti-terrorism law further restricted freedom of the press. It became a crime to mention any group or persons the government deemed as terrorists. The law's broad definition includes opposition politicians, as well as supporters of armed opposition groups. The government routinely warned Kebede, as well as the editors of Ethiopia's popular news weekly Addis Neger, about covering certain groups or persons. If charged under the new law, they could face up to 20 years in prison.
Those editors of Addis Neger chose to leave the country out of fear of arrest and prosecution. But Dawit stayed behind. He had a completely different response. And instead of leaving the country, he decided simply to respond to the criticism through his newspaper by writing columns, refuting these accusations.
In 2010, Kebede's determination paid off. He received the International Press Freedom Award from the Committee to Protect Journalists.
He has paid tremendous personal price for continuing journalism. If he did the easy thing of not criticizing the government but praising the government, he could receive tons of advertising from government agencies and make a lot of money. But this is someone that seems to be driven with a profound commitment to journalism and a desire to serve a purpose, a public service, to inform, to ask questions.
Witnessing the truth is satisfaction above anything, for me. As far as I am here in this planet, I have to do this. In my lifespan, I have to do this. This is my childhood dream.